Mr. Tim Holliday, a pharmaceutical quality compliance officer, also from Oldham. And I'm sure you all remember you get 10 seconds for a little ponder, and if you get 5 in a row, 5 right in a row, you get an extra mark. We start with Miss Hegarty. There are 2 European countries in which there are said to be no snakes found in the wild. Can you name one of them?
Ireland.
Yes, the other's Iceland. I suppose it might be the deciding factor when choosing your holes. Let's go. There are no snakes. Well, I don't know. It doesn't come off the tongue too easily. Miss Hegarty again. What did the science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke forecast in an article published in the magazine Wireless World in 1945?
Satellites. Satellite television.
I think you're as close as you need be. Satellite communications. I think you thought you were implying that. Indeed you were. What was the origin of the expression white elephant for an unwanted and burdensome possession?
The king of Thailand, I think, used to give people a white elephant, and they were terribly, terribly valuable, and you had to spend a lot of money feeding it and so on, and it ruined you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's pretty elaborate and by no means certain. I mean, the person might pass it on to an aunt in Broadstairs. Who knows? Anyway, let's have another question for you. Bishop Lancelot Andrews preached a sermon on the Nativity where he said, "It was no summer progress, a cold coming they had of it at this time of the year, just the worst time of the year, to take a journey, and especially a long journey." Which poet used those sentiments in a poem?
T.S. Eliot.
Yeah, lifted them almost wholesale, really. According to its full title, the All England Club at Wimbledon covers another sport besides lawn tennis. What is it?
Croquet.
It is. Yes, indeed. A flying start for Miss Hegarty, 5 in a row in the extra mark. Mr. Worthington's turn. Of which British tribe was Boudica or Boadicea the Queen?
The Iceni.
Yes. Which major Canadian port is the capital of the province of Nova Scotia, Mr. Worthington?
Halifax.
It is. Where in the world will you find the legislative assembly with the longest continuous history?
Iceland.
No. Have a go, Mr. Holliday.
The Isle of Man.
The Isle of Man is quite right. It's Mrs. Rigby's turn. What was the last letter of the ancient Greek alphabet?
Omega.
It was. What was the name given to the 1703 treaty between Britain and Portugal, which allowed Portuguese wines to be imported at 1/3 less duty than French wine?
The Treaty of Lisbon.
No. Do the others know? Yes, Miss Hegarty.
Treaty of Douro.
Wasn't that? Any idea? Mr. Holliday?
Treaty of Utrecht.
No. Well, I'll tell you if you don't. Yeah, no. The Methuen Treaty is what it was called. It's Mr. Holliday's turn. Can you name the insect which is also known as the potato beetle?
Colorado beetle.
Yes. The world's first commercially successful completely synthetic fiber was produced by the American scientist Dr. Wallace Carruthers in the 1930s. What is it?
Nylon.
Yes, we all owe those smelly shirts to Dr. Wallace Carruthers. Farmers and other country dwellers are now paid to replace stone walls and create heather moorlands in what are known as ESAs. What does ESA stand for?
European set aside.
No. Now, you can have a little work this out. Miss Hegarty.
Environmentally sensitive area.
Yes, quite right. And at the end of the opening round, let me tell you what the scores are. They're these. 1 to Mrs. Rigby, 2 to Mr. Worthington, 3 to Mr. Holliday, 7 to Miss Hegarty. Can you tell us, Miss Hegarty, which religious order was founded by Ignatius Loyola in 1534?
The Jesuits.
Yes. Can you name either the elder brother or the sister of Richmond Crompton's William?
Ethel.
Yes, Robert being the other one. Which country that wished to join the European single currency in the first wave failed to meet the Maastricht criteria?
France.
No. Mr. Worthington?
Italy.
No. Mrs. Rigby?
Denmark.
No. Oh, Mr. Holliday.
Greece.
You're right, sir. Greece. Well done. Mr. Worthington, Buick's hooper and mute are all species of the same bird, all found in Britain. Which bird?
Swan.
Yes. Which city is served by Ben Gurion International Airport?
Tel Aviv.
Yes. At what time on what day does the Jewish Shabbat, the Sabbath, end?
Sunset on Saturday.
Yes. Who commanded the United Nations forces during the first phase of the Korean War from July 1950 to April 1951 when he was dismissed by President Truman?
MacArthur.
Yes. What is the other more familiar name for a compression ignition engine?
A diesel engine.
Yes, a diesel engine. And 5 in a row again. So Mr. Worthington gets the extra mark, and we pass to Mrs. Rigby. The AA grades hotels by the number of stars it awards. What symbols does the English Tourist Board use in its grading system?
Crowns.
Yes. In its 1997 Christmas advertising campaign, the NSPCC used a variety of music, from an orchestral version of Visi d'Arte from Tosca to this pop hit from the 1960s. You have to tell us who the singers are. Seekers is right. And there you had it. So it's Mr. Holliday's turn. Who was the British Prime Minister who resigned office on the 9th of January 1957 after the Suez Crisis?
Sir Anthony Eden.
Yes. Which of Joseph Conrad's stories is set in the imaginary South American country of Costa Guana?
Nostromo.
Yes, you're right. It was written down here, Costa Guano. And that means something quite different. Your turn again, Mr. Holliday. With which African city is the port of Apapa associated?
Addis Ababa.
No? Mrs. Rigby.
Lagos.
It is. And at the end of that round, let's see how the scores stand. They are these: 4 to Mrs. Rigby, 6 to Mr. Holliday, 8 to Mr. Worthington, 10 to Miss Hegarty. Miss Hegarty, Winston Churchill became a popular hero after he escaped from Boer captivity in Pretoria in 1899. What was he? Why was he in South Africa? What was he doing there?
He was with the Scouts.
No, that's not the answer. Mr. Worthington.
He was a war correspondent.
He was, for the Morning Post. Mr. Worthington, Churchill's escape is one of those described in a book of escapes and hurried journeys, first published in 1922. Who was the author?
John Buchan.
It was. In decimals, the fraction 1/3 is 0.333 and so on. 0.3 recurring. What symbol do you add to change 0.3 to 0.3 recurring? As a symbol.
A small R after the figure.
No. Mrs. Rigby.
A dot above
A
the
dot,
three.
or a small circle, but a dot, yes. Mrs. Rigby, the press widely reported Sir Peter O'Sullivan's presence at the November 1997 Newbury meeting. The Hennessy Gold Cup was his last race as a commentator before he retired. What was his connection with the next race?
Did he present the award?
No, I thought you were going to say he was running in it. No. Miss Hegarty?
Did he own the winner?
He did. A horse call sounds fine. Yep. Mr. Holliday, which of Shakespeare's plays is set in Messina, in Italy?
Twelfth Night.
No, Mrs. Rigby.
Much Ado About Nothing.
You're quite right, ma'am. You're quite right. At the end of that round, the scores are now 6 to Mr. Holliday, 6 to Mrs. Rigby, 10 to Mr. Worthington, 11 to Miss Hegarty. Miss Hegarty, though the former Labour MP Joan Maynard, who died in March 1998, once won a libel case against someone who called her a crypto-communist, she was very far to the left, and she was nicknamed Stalin's what?
Nightingale.
No, that's rather a nice thing to be called. Mr. Worthington.
Handmaiden.
No, these are all rather dainty. Well, but I mustn't say more. I might give it away. Who knows? Mrs. Rigby, Mr. Holliday, have a guess. Stalin's what?
Floozy.
Stallions Flute. That's even nicer than the other ones. She would have been quite pleased to be called that, but no. Mr. Holliday?
Footstool.
No. Stalin's granny. And I regard that as rather rude. But there. Mr. Worthington, what is the long-distance path that runs for over 2,000 miles down the eastern United States from Mount Catardon in Maine to Springer Mountain in Georgia?
The Appalachian Trail.
Yes. Io was a princess loved by Zeus, and to conceal her from his jealous wife, Hera, she was changed into what?
A tree.
No. Mrs. Rigby?
A peacock?
No. Miss Hegarty?
A cloud.
No. Now, Mr. Holliday.
The swan.
No, all of those are rather nice. Well, most of them are. She turned into a heifer. That should have put his wife off the scent, don't you think? Mrs. Rigby, which soft, ductile, white metal is represented by the symbol NB, capital N, small b?
Zinc?
Nope. Mr. Worthington?
Niobium.
Yes, it is. And it's your turn, Mr. Holliday. In whose reign was the Pensioners or Pensionary Parliament? Whose reign?
Charles II.
Yes. In the National Gallery in London, there is a painting called Experiment with an Air Pump by Joseph Bright of Derby. What small creature seems likely to meet its end as air is withdrawn from a glass jar?
A mouse.
No. Missy Rigby?
A bird?
A bird is right. It happens to be a white cockatoo. And let's see how the scores have moved. Yes, 7 for Mr. Holliday, 7 for Mrs. Rigby, 11 for Miss Hegarty, 12 for Mr. Worthington. Now, halfway along, and in comes a listener who tries to beat all the brains working together, as it were, with 2 questions. Adrian Jones from Radstock, Bath, asked first, who was the first member of the British royal family to travel by train and to have a specially built railway coach?
Queen Adelaide.
Yes, Queen Adelaide.
Queen Adelaide.
You're right. Second from Mr. Jones, King Edward VII was the first British king to learn to drive a motor car. Who was his appropriately aristocratic instructor? Because it wouldn't do for just anyone to tell him how to drive.
Is it the Duke of Kent?
No.
Well, one of Rolls and Royce was that Mr. Rolls. Charles Rolls.
No, it was John Montagu, 2nd Earl Montagu of Beaulieu. So, yes, you got 1 right, you got 1 wrong. It means that Mr. Jones has won. He gets a book token and a round of applause. Miss Hegarty, which writer created the fictional Indian small town of Malgudi and has used it as the setting of more than a dozen novels, notably The Vendor of Sweets?
Tagore.
No. Missy Rigby?
R.K. Narayan.
You're right, Mr. Worthington. What is the function of the members of a prison's board of visitors appointed by the Home Office? What do they do?
They check on security.
No. Mrs. Rigby?
They represent the views of the prisoners.
Ah. Yes. How grudgingly he looked when I looked. I caught his eye, but he's grudge-worthy. I mean, he's not being very open-handed. Yes, to listen to any complaints that prisoners may have about their treatment, so their views, yes, certainly. Which is England's only Grade 1 listed pier, which is to be restored at a cost of £34 million?
Brighton.
Yes. You didn't say which pier, because they have more than one, doesn't matter. The West Pier. The tail of a fox is a brush. What is the tail of a hound?
A queue.
No. Mr. Worthington?
A flag.
No. Mr. Holliday?
A lash.
No. No, you don't know, Miss Hegarty. The stern is the answer. Mr. Holliday, what was the name of the ex-priest whose preaching helped stir up the discontent that led to the 1381 Peasants' Revolt and about whom William Morris wrote a romance?
John Ball.
Yes, John Ball is right. What sort of rain is serein, spelled S-E-R-E-I-N? French, if you didn't spot the pronunciation. Small blame to you. What
No,
kind?
I'm sorry.
Don't know what kind of rain it might be. Have a guess.
A shower.
No, no. Mr. Worthington?
Drizzle.
No, no. Mrs. Rigby?
Scotch mist.
No. Miss Hegarty?
Incredibly heavy rain.
No, it's fine rain from an apparently cloudless sky or after sunset. That's what it is. Let me tell you the scores. We have these. 8 to Mr. Holliday, 10 to Mrs. Rigby, 11 to Miss Hegarty, 12 to Mr. Worthington. So all very close together. Now, a bit of music, Miss Hegarty. In 1997, to mark the 50th anniversary of Sir George Scholt's first recording contract with the company, Decca issued 3 special recordings. One is of music by Richard Strauss with the Berlin Philharmonic, one a mixed bag, including Elgar and Kodai with the Vienna Philharmonic, and the third, a concert performance of a Wagner opera with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is the opera's overture. Which opera is it? So, which opera is that?
Lohengrin?
No. Mrs. Rigby?
The Master Singers of Nuremberg.
Yes, it is. And some of Wagner's music isn't as bad as it sounds, as someone said. Mr. Worthington, what is the name of the detective created by Edgar Allan Poe who investigated the mystery of Marie Roget and the murders in the Rue Morgue? What is his name?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
No. Mr. Holliday?
Dupin.
Dupin is right. And now, Mrs. Rigby, which of the Spanish autonomous regions includes most of the country's southern coast and has the cities of Seville and Granada within its borders?
Andalusia.
Yes. Whose heir has the courtesy title Marquis of Douro?
King of Spain.
No. Miss Hegarty?
Duke of Wellington.
Yes. Mr. Holliday, which Roman emperor set out his Stoic-based philosophy in the Meditations? The Meditations of whom?
Marcus Aurelius.
Yes. Sodium tetraborate is a compound of boron which, amongst other things, can be used as an antiseptic or for removing stains like those of alcohol or jam. What is its everyday name by which you might ask for it in a chemist?
Borax.
It is. The East Kent Regiment was known by a name inspired by the colour of facings of the uniform. What was the name?
Scarlets.
No. Miss Hegarty.
The Buffs.
The Buffs is right. Let's see how those scores so close together may have moved. Well, they're still very close. 11 to Mr. Holliday, 12 to Mrs. Rigby, 12 to Mr. Worthington, 13 to Miss Hegarty. All rode fast, but none so fast as Stroke. Miss Hegarty, what group of animals are referred to in Kipling's Jungle Book stories as the Bundalog?
The monkeys or the apes?
The monkeys, yes. What is the full name of UNSCOM, the team in Iraq seeking out the country's weapons of mass destruction? What do the letters stand for?
United Nations... No.
Don't know? Mrs. Rigby?
United Nations System system, control.
That's a nice try. A pretty try. Mr. Worthington?
United Nations Security Commission on Munitions.
Very nice try indeed. No. Excellent try. Come on, Mr. Holliday. I know it's coming to you. I'm sure it is.
United Nations Scrutineers.
No, the United Nations Special Commission. You nearly got it. All of you nearly got it. And now it's Mr. Worthington's turn. In which of its states does Cape Comorin, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Comorin, the most southerly part of India, lie?
Kerala.
No. Mr. Holliday?
No, sorry, it's not
You
what I
don't
thought it
know?
was.
Miss Hegarty?
Madras?
No. Mrs. Rigby? would you
Tamil
have a go?
Nadu. Tamil Nadu.
Precisely, ma'am. Tamil Nadu. And it is your turn again. In which German city did the architect Walter Gropius found the Bauhaus in 1919?
Berlin.
No. Mr. Holliday?
Munich.
No. Plenty of German cities left. Miss Hegarty?
Frankfurt?
No. Now, Mr. Worthington.
Bonn.
No, Weimar is the answer. Mr. Holliday, what political party was founded by Jose Antonio Primo de Rivera?
Spanish Fascist Party.
Yeah, I think that's right. The phalange or the phalange, or pronounce it as you may. Which part of a flower is made up of a filament and an anther?
Stamen.
Yes. The Diamond Sutra in the British Library is an ancient Chinese document supposed to be the first... what?
Dictionary.
No. Miss Hegarty?
Buddhist text?
No. Mrs. Rigby?
Hindu text.
No. Mr. Worthington?
Printed text.
Yes, the first printed document. And at the end of that round, let's see. Oh, goodness, listen. 13 to Mr. Holliday, 13 to Mrs. Rigby, 13 to Mr. Worthington, 14 to Miss Hegarty. And as you may well believe, the last round begins at this very interesting juncture. Miss Hegarty, who led the barbarian army which was defeated at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains in northern France in AD 451 by an army led by Theodoric? These are names to conjure with. King of the Visigoths and the Roman general Aetius.
Attila the Hun?
Yes, when a photograph of Attila appeared in the Tatler, the Huns were all delighted and the editor was knighted. Which poetic maritime tragedy, Miss Hegarty, was worse because the skipper had taken his little daughter to bear him company?
The Wreck of the Hesperus?
Yes. Which British film of a Graham Greene novel was retitled Young Scarface for the American market?
Brighton Rock?
Yes. Which of the inner London boroughs is entitled to the prefix Royal?
Kensington and Chelsea?
Yes. Which country is the world's largest exporter of sheep?
Australia?
No. Mrs. Rigby?
New Zealand.
Yes, New Zealand. Mr. Worthington, what kind of animal is a dhole, D-H-O-L-E, found in India and Southeast Asia?
It's a dog.
It is a wild dog. Who, in Sir Walter Scott's poem, stole his prospective bride from the poor craven bridegroom who was a laggard in love and a dastard in war?
Young Lochinvar.
Yes. Who is usually credited with having coined the words, "There's a sucker born every minute"?
W.C. Fields.
No. Miss Hegarty?
P.T. Barnum?
Yes. Mrs. Rigby. What two rivers join at the French city of Lyon?
The Rhone and the Meuse.
No. We're nearly there. You must have a try. Any? Yes, Mr. Holliday?
Rhone and Loire.
No. Miss Hegarty?
The Rhone and the Seine?
No.
The Rhone and the Rhine.
No, the Rhone and the Saône. Mr. Holliday, a decoration instituted in 1883 was originally solely for ladies and entitles its recipient to put the letters RRC after their name. What is RRC? In full. What do the letters stand for?
No, sorry, I don't know.
You don't? You can't work one in there? Only a few minutes to go. Can the others try? RRC for ladies. You won't have a try. I know what you're trying to fit words to them, but you can't just do it. I'll have to tell you the answer. It is the Royal Red Cross. Yes. And that is the end of our final round. Let me tell you the final scores. They are these: 13 to Mr. Holliday, 14 to Mrs. Rigby, 15 to Mr. Worthington, 19 to Miss Hegarty. So a damn close run thing, but Miss Hegarty clearly is our winner. She goes forward to the semi-finals. Next week we have 4 contestants from the north of England. Until then, goodbye.
Chairman of Brain of Britain 1998 is Robert Robinson. The programme was devised by John P. Wynne. The questions are set by Ian Gillis and the producer is Richard Edis. BBC World Service.
Every month on Jazzmatazz,